What's up, everybody? I'm Roman Gennaro. Welcome back to Empire Sports Talk. It's been a while. I wanted to jump on, do a quick one, and this will try to be a pretty quick one. I know I say that often, but I don't have too much to talk about, just a couple of big stories I want to get to. First things first, a seismic trade in the NBA that shook players and fans alike to their core earlier this week happened in the middle of the night with the trade deadline looming. Luka Doncic goes from the Dallas Mavericks to the Los Angeles Lakers. And it's been a couple of days and I still can't fully wrap my head around this, and a lot of people still can't. We saw plenty of reactions from players like Devin Booker, Joel Embiid, Kevin Durant. We saw videos and tweets live of their reactions to this trade. And in return, Anthony Davis goes back to the Dallas Mavericks. Now, there were a couple of other pieces involved, such as Max Christie going with Anthony Davis to Dallas, but all anybody is thinking about is Luka and Anthony Davis. And on one hand, this trade makes sense. For the Lakers, going to get a young superstar like Luka Doncic to pair alongside an all-time great who's getting older, LeBron James, makes a lot of sense. But from the Dallas side, fans and many people alike are saying this is one of the worst trades in NBA history. Now, The Athletic did list this as the third greatest trade of all time in the NBA, and I'll get more into that in a bit, but that was specifically from the Lakers side of things. From Dallas' side of things, they lose their franchise cornerstone, the person that was there to take the baton from Dirk Nowitzki, and now, in return, they get a 31-year-old injury-prone Anthony Davis. Not to say that Anthony Davis still isn't good. To start the year, he was having a run where many thought, if healthy, he's the runaway MVP. But with Anthony Davis, if healthy, is the biggest question mark of all of them. And so I have no choice but to think of this as a huge downgrade for a Dallas team that was in the finals a year ago, despite having what I thought to be a pretty thin roster out once you get past Luka and Kyrie. Now it's Anthony Davis and Kyrie, and while the size differential, one being a guard, one being a forward/center, makes more sense, whereas only one has to be dominant with the ball. As good as Anthony Davis is at this point in his career, it's clear that it's a downgrade from Luka Doncic to Anthony Davis. Again, no disrespect to Anthony Davis, but we've been talking about Luka for a couple of years as one of the faces of the NBA. And now he's joining the Lakers team. For the Lakers, as I said, this is a win. They are hoping that Luka is the future of the franchise beyond the playing days of LeBron James, who clearly is happy about this because he came out just a day or two ago and said, I plan to stay with LA even beyond this year. So LeBron James is very optimistic about the Lakers' chances to land another championship. But again, I have to say, from Dallas's point of view, this makes no sense. And it falls squarely on the shoulders of GM Nico Harrison. And he has doubled down in the days since the trade, saying that culture is the main reason for the move, that Anthony Davis fits the culture that they want going forward in Dallas. I understand that there were times where Luka wasn't in the best shape. I understand that there were things that maybe ownership didn't love about Luka Doncic, such as that viral video in I believe it was during the Western Conference Finals, where you see Mavs great Michael Finley taking a beer out of Luka's hand immediately following the final horn. I understand that there may have been some off-the-court things with Luka Doncic, but nothing, I believe, that warrants trading a player of his talent, of his transformative offensive ability. And granted, defensively, Anthony Davis is an upgrade. But overall, I think it's a step down. Again, no disrespect to Anthony Davis, but he's 31 years old, and he is extremely injury prone. And I just don't think that this was a good move for Dallas. Again, Nico Harrison cited culture as the reason that they made the swap, but this did bring to light another very questionable move that Nico Harrison made in his time with Nike. Nico Harrison has been the general manager of the Dallas Mavericks since 2021. And yes, he should get a lot of credit for helping lead them to the NBA Finals this year and the success that they've had. But this particular trade brought to life a story from Nico Harrison's days at Nike. He spent 19 years working for Nike, and a story came back up from 2013 that Nico Harrison is the same guy who botched a presentation at Nike for Stephen Curry in 2013. And this is reading directly from a social media post. The biggest mistakes made in the meeting included Harrison calling Steph Seth, which is his brother's name, spelling Stephen like Stefan with an O-N instead of an E-N, and the presentation being the exact same presentation that they had tailor-made for Kevin Durant. Curry was signed to Nike at the time, but was so put off by the meeting that he switched to Under Armour, and it saw Nike miss out on hundreds of millions of dollars as a result. Another reason that Steph left Nike is because the presentation did not include. So let's remember that Nico Harrison, the man that is defending what's possibly the worst trade in NBA history, at least for one side, is the same guy that butchered a Nike presentation, calling Steph the wrong name, spelling it wrong, and using a presentation that was not meant for him. He copy and pasted a presentation from Kevin Durant. Nico Harrison can defend this move until he's blue in the face, and I'm sure Anthony Davis will be good with Dallas. I'm not saying he won't. Like I said, it will bring some improved defense, and it does spread the wealth a little bit from the ball-centric Kyrie Irving to the big man Anthony Davis. It spreads the wealth a little bit more. But I don't see that you could look at this as anything other than a disaster of a trade. If you're a Dallas Mavericks fan, or even if you're an NBA fan that likes parity in the NBA, because you see one of the all-time great young players in the game right now paired with one of the all-time greats, period, it seems like LA could dominate for the next couple of years, and that's not great for the parity of the NBA. But anyway, I said earlier that I would go back to this. The Athletic released a list of the top 10 of what they believe is the top 10 NBA trades of all time. And they did list Luka Doncic to the Lakers at number 3. Number 1 was Kareem Abdul-Jabbar from the Bucks to the Lakers. Number 2, Wilt Chamberlain from the Warriors to the Sixers. Number 3, as I said, was Luka Doncic. Number 4 was Wilt Chamberlain again from the Sixers to the Lakers. Number 5 was Oscar Robertson from the Kings to the Bucks. Number 6, Shaq from the Lakers to the Heat. Number 7, Julius Erving from the Nets to the Sixers. Number 8, Charles Barkley from the Sixers to the Suns. Number 9, Clyde Drexler from the Trailblazers to the Rockets. And number 10, Earl Monroe when he was traded to the Knicks. Now, the Sixers involved a lot on that list, but you also see the Lakers. So the Athletic has Luka Doncic as the 3rd greatest trade of all time in NBA history. I also saw a lot of comparisons to the Pau Gasol trade that sent him from the Grizzlies to the Lakers back in 2009. So I don't want to spend too much more time on this trade because there was another huge trade in the NBA that got overlooked because of how seismic this trade was. And I do think this second trade is huge as well. So I'll touch on that a little bit. The Kings traded De'Aaron Fox to the Spurs in a 3-team deal that also included the Chicago Bulls. Zach LaVine goes back to the Kings in return, and sharpshooter Kevin Huerter goes to Chicago. So this was another trade that saw 2 stars in this league. Obviously not to the level of Anthony Davis and Luka Doncic, but 2 more stars trading places. And I look at this trade, and I really like this for the Spurs. Just a year ago, the Spurs drafted a generational talent, possibly the best generational talent we've seen since LeBron James in 2003, Victor Wembanyama. And They were obviously at the top overall pick for a reason, but we could see that they were building, and we could see that it wouldn't be long before the San Antonio Spurs would make the playoffs with Victor Wembanyama. But this is the Spurs going all in, I think. De'Aaron Fox is a difference maker offensively. He's capable of putting up 50-point games, and with his speed and shot creating ability and Wembanyama's unicorn nature, his ability to block shots, his ability to shoot threes, to do everything basically. I love this combination. Similarly to the ball dominant Kyrie Irving with the size of Anthony Davis, I think this is a more extreme version of that. And I'm going to make a bold prediction based on the fact that we saw Kyrie Irving have chemistry issues with Luka Doncic when he first came over to Dallas. I believe, and this is just my bold prediction, as we are just over halfway in the NBA season, I'm predicting that the Spurs, who are currently 12th, just 2.5 games out of the final play-in tournament spot, will make the playoffs with the new dynamic duo of Victor Wembanyama and De'Aaron Fox. But the new duo of Anthony Davis and Kyrie Irving in Dallas, who are currently 9th, just 1 game up on the final play-in spot, will not. So in a world where only one of these two dynamic duos can make it, I would put my money on the San Antonio Spurs. Now, for Dallas fans, I hope I'm wrong. This trade makes me sick for you guys. How much of a difference maker Luka is, and no one saw this coming. There was a period of time where no one believed it was real, and it just, for a brief time, made me sick to think about that for Dallas Mavericks fans. But that is my bold prediction. I believe that the Spurs will improve and find their way into the playoffs, and Dallas will have another chemistry issue like they did when Kyrie Irving first joined the team, and struggle and end up missing the playoffs altogether. That is my prediction. Shifting gears, I want to talk about football. This was the big story for me. This was going to be the lead story until the Dallas Mavericks broke the NBA. One more thing that I want to mention about the Luka Doncic trade. And both Anthony Davis and Luka Doncic seemed blindsided by this move. Both players seemed very happy to stay where they were, and this was shocking. Most likely, probably, to Luka Doncic, whose father has come out and said that he is shocked for his son. His son is shocked. They don't agree with the way that the Mavs treated him. Nico Harrison himself joked that Luka Doncic probably wouldn't want to hear from him after the trade. But this trade likely affects Luka Doncic's career earnings in a big way. If Luka had stayed with the Dallas Mavericks, he would be eligible to sign a 5-year, $346 million Supermax extension this summer. Now that he's been traded to the Los Angeles Lakers, he is no longer eligible for the Supermax and can only sign a 5-year, $229 million contract extension if he chooses to with the Lakers. Obviously, 5 years for $229 is still a great sum of money, but that is a difference, a max extension difference of $117 million for Luka Doncic following this trade. So that is significant when you're talking about potential earnings for a player of Luka's caliber, who has said that he doesn't see himself playing as long as guys like LeBron James, and he probably doesn't see himself playing that long. And so when you're talking about career earnings for a guy who has admittedly not said he's not going to play as long, that's a significant difference, $117 million. Now I want to go to the NFL. This was the big story. This was going to be the lead story of this episode before Luka Doncic and the Mavericks broke the internet. Pete Carroll is now the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. And I posted a graphic on our social media channels when this happened because I had to look at the coaching carousel of the AFC West right away. And I think this may be the greatest collection of coaches an NFL division has ever had. And if you go to that graphic, it reads like this. You have Andy Reid, 3-time Super Bowl champion and 300 wins, which is 4th all time. Sean Payton, 35, Super Bowl 44 champion and 2006 AP Coach of the Year. Jim Harbaugh, 2012 NFC champion and the 2023 College Football Playoff national champion. And Pete Carroll, Super Bowl 48 champion and 2004 AP national champion while at USC. So this may be the most accomplished division in NFL history in regards to its coaches. Obviously, I don't have a dog in the fight for the AFC West, but this hire was exciting because Pete Carroll is a coach. We've seen what he can do as a coach at both the college and NFL level. But also, a few days after the Pete Carroll hiring, Chip Kelly announced that he would be leaving his job as offensive coordinator of Ohio State for the same job in Pete Carroll's offense with the Raiders. And this is monumental to me. As good of a coach as Pete Carroll is, and as much as he's done in his career as a coach, this was the big one. Chip Kelly is obviously a great offensive mind, and it would not surprise me. This is something of another bold statement, but it would not surprise me to see the Raiders have a Commanders-type turnaround in the next season or two. Because this is exactly what the Commanders did. They went out and hired a defensive-minded head coach with championship experience. Let's remember that Dan Quinn led the Falcons to the Super Bowl in 2016, ultimately falling to the Patriots, and then backed him up with a great offensive mind in Cliff Kingsbury. This is the blueprint that Vegas is following. Granted, Pete Carroll is significantly older than Dan Quinn, and Chip Kelly is significantly older than Cliff Kingsbury, so the can's a little further down the road. But this is that blueprint. Now, Washington had a few more pieces in place than the Raiders do. But the Raiders do have some good players. And this would be a tough division to lead that turnaround in with the coaches that I mentioned. But so is the NFC East. I believe that if the Raiders are aggressive this offseason, that we could see a Commanders-type turnaround in Vegas. Shedeur Sanders has made it known through his social media that Vegas might be his preferred destination. Every single time they lost a game, Shedeur Sanders would post like the big eye emoji, like the look at that emoji, almost rooting for them to lose so they could have the top pick. The Raiders currently have the 5th pick in the draft, but could trade up. And in a draft for a team that desperately needs a quarterback, in a draft where there's only 2 really big options, I could see the Raiders trading up for the number 1 or number 2 overall pick to land Shedeur Sanders. Now, and this leads me to the final story, another big move they could make to shore up the other side of the ball and pair alongside Max Crosby for a lethal 1-2 punch on the D-line. Myles Garrett has requested a trade from the Cleveland Browns. This is no real surprise, as a year ago, Cleveland was one of the surprise teams making it to the playoffs. They had the best defense in the league, besides maybe the Baltimore Ravens. And after 8 years, Myles Garrett has prioritized winning. In a statement, Garrett referenced his desire to win and compete on the biggest stages and the ultimate goal of winning the Super Bowl that led to his decision to request a trade. He also referenced to it as one of the toughest decisions of his life. Obviously, there are teams out there where Myles Garrett would have a more immediate chance to win a Super Bowl. But I think I can speak for a lot of NFL fans. Again, I mentioned going back to the parity of the NBA. For parity reasons, that we don't want to see Myles Garrett end up on a team like the Kansas City Chiefs or the Philadelphia Eagles or the San Francisco 49ers if they are able to bounce back next year. We don't want to see one of those 3-4 teams that always lands the big pieces these days. We don't want to see Myles Garrett on one of those teams. I think if the Raiders can trade for Myles Garrett and trade up in the draft for Shedeur Sanders, you've really got something. I think that we could, I'm not saying we will, again, this is more of a bold prediction. I think we could see a Washington Commanders type turnaround, especially if those two things happen. Those are big ifs. Those are big question marks. The quarterback is the most important piece that you can add, but after a quarterback, as some analysts would say, the second most important piece is a pass rusher. They're both out there now. And we've seen what Pete Carroll can do with a dual threat mobile quarterback in Russell Wilson. Shedeur Sanders has the size that Russell Wilson did not. Shedeur Sanders has the arm strength that Russell Wilson does not. Again, going back to the similarities with what Washington did this year, Pete Carroll's the defensive guy. The Raiders have always been seen as a defensive first team. That's the culture of that team. Then you bring in an offensive guy like Chip Kelly, who I wrote a blog article about earlier in the summer, saying that I believed that he went to Ohio State to put the pressure on Ryan Day. That if Ryan Day had another year where he lost to Michigan and then failed to win the big one, that he would be replaced with Chip Kelly. I believed that Chip Kelly was the heir apparent to Ryan Day at Ohio State. But now that Ryan Day and Ohio State got over the hump and won the college football playoff, that's probably off the table for the foreseeable future. And maybe Chip Kelly's ultimate goal wasn't to be a head coach in college again. Maybe it's to be back in the NFL. So here he is. He saw the opportunity with a coach like Pete Carroll. And I think this could be something. Maybe not this year. And with as tough as that division is, maybe not next year. But I see a roadmap where it could be possible for the Las Vegas Raiders to have a quick turnaround to the level of the Washington Commanders or the Houston Texans. So it would be very interesting to keep your eye on that. That's all I have for you on this episode of Empire Sports Talk. I am Roman Gennaro. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel for more episodes and future content. And until then, it's a good day to go 1-0. I'll see you next time.